Okay, so I've got the exterior shell of the building here, which I really want to allow more light to come through. And so you can achieve that obviously with windows, and I've got a very basic window there. But to have large expanses of glazing, often it's better to use curtain walls. So I just want to give you a basic run through on those. And so I'm going to begin by changing this area to a curtain wall. So I'm going to remove the door and the window that I have there, and I'll go into plan view. Okay, and so you can see it was this area here that I had the door and the window. And so I'm going to break this wall using the split element tool, and just break it there where the other wall joins to it. And I might just check that joint using thin lines, and I'm going to drag the end there over to the corner. And it's a good chance to show you a little trick with Revit. If I drag that over, I'd be fairly sure it's going to try and rejoin those walls for me. Now, I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to drag it further away on the other side. And then this one, you can see it's again changed the join condition. And that's a common issue you'll have with Revit. What it's trying to do is clean the walls up for you. And you can turn that off by right-clicking on the grip and choosing Disallow Join. So now I can drag that joint anywhere, and the other wall is still set to join. And I'm going to leave it that way, so that's why it's cut off here. But the wall that I'm going to change now is not joining automatically at the corner. And you'll know when you have this problem, you'll find that it's joining in ways you don't want it to, and so just remember that option. It's a really important one, but one that's easy to miss. Right clicking on the grip and Disallow Join. If you want to allow the join again, you can always just right click and choose Allow Join. So I'm going to, with that wall selected, change it now to one of the preloaded curtain walls I have, which is storefront. And you can see it's moved the wall because of the way the location line works with a curtain wall. I'll talk about that in a minute. But then I can bring this other wall that I have over to the left and rejoin this one by just dragging that down again. And you can see again it's doing the joint automatically for me, which I don't really want. Well, this one's okay, but I don't want the other wall to join, so I'm going to just again right click on the end, Disallow Join, drag that back, and then again this one. Okay, so when you work with things like curtain walls, you need to be comfortable with those options like Allow and Disallow Join. And if you have overlapping walls afterwards, you can always use the Join Geometry option. I can choose these two walls and clean them up again. Right, so I've got the wall there that has the mullions and the glazing predefined, and I'll switch to a 3D view so you can see that. That's a fairly good option if you just want to have a glazed panel, and in any project file you should have that option to choose storefront. I'm going to go back to the ground floor, and you can see again it's set to the center line, and you'll see in the properties panel that there's no option to change that. So a curtain wall always is drawn using the center line. So I'm going to use Move. We can, once I've selected the wall, use the Move option to then snap to the center line and then snap to the midpoint or the center of the wall that I want it to line up with. So you have to move curtain walls in and out, unlike regular walls where you can often use the location line. And again here with this wall at the end, I'll select the right wall, again right click on the grip and Disallow Join so that I can move that wall end. And I'll again show that in the 3D view, so that looks a little bit tidier. Then the wall I want to make though, I want to have with my own panels. So I'm going to select that wall and set it to the other option, which is curtain wall 6mm glazing. And there, because it's going to remove these panels, it's giving me the option to delete grid lines, which I'm going to choose. And so that's often the most basic wall that you can begin with. But you can see as well that it's got mullions going around the outside, which I'm going to select. So I'm just using Control to select those, and then I'll delete them so that I've got just a plain sheet of glass. And so you might have used the curtain wall option there to create plain sheets of glass, but then if you use them at a corner, which I have with these walls here, I'll just choose those 3 walls and choose that same option, curtain wall 6mm thick glazing, then you might have seen that the corner joints look a bit unusual. I'll show you in plan. Okay, so you can see there the corner panels, or the glazing at the corner crosses over the other panel. And that's normal with a curtain wall. So that's one of the first things you need to get used to when you work with curtain walls. Expect the corners to be a bit rough at first, because you need to think about the framing. So with a wall like that, you can either use a quad mullion at the corner, which I'll just choose once I go to architecture. You've got the mullion tool. So that's remind you to begin with, you just use the regular wall tool to create curtain walls, and they're always going to give you an option for curtain walls in the properties panel there. Don't use the curtain systems option on architecture, that's for something different. But then below curtain system, you've got the other options that you use when you're making curtain walls, curtain grid, which I'll show you in a moment, and then mullion. So with mullion, I'm going to go to quad mullion 1, and then choose the corner, and you can see then it's connecting those panels with that corner mullion. And if I show you in plan, now that corner joint, I'll turn especially thin lines off, now that's showing the way it should. Unfortunately, they give you really thick framing to begin with, so you can always select those and go to edit type and change the dimension. So I'm going to make it maybe 100mm for both of these options. Okay, so that's a little bit nicer. We could make it maybe a little bit less than that again. So I'll make it maybe 75mm. So I don't know if you've thought about the way glass panels need to connect, but if you're going to create designs that use glass panels, you should be starting to think about that. And you can have them joining just with a silicon joint, but when they're joining at a corner, you usually need some sort of frame. And so you can have a narrow frame, like I've got there, but then you can see the panel now is to one side of that frame. So I've got to select the glass there, and this is where you need to think about the families that are being used. So I've got the mullion, which I can easily select just by clicking on it. When I go to select the panel, it's going to select the whole wall. So I'm going to use the tab option, which is the final major thing other than grids, which I'll come to, that you need to use with curtain walls. Make sure you're comfortable using that tab key to change your selection options. So there I can select the panel now, my glass panel, go to edit type, and you can see it's got an offset there of 37, which is why it's set to one side. So I'll make that 0, click OK, and you can see now my glass is centered, coming out from that frame. So that looks much better, and you can see coming around the other side, it's done it for the whole wall. It's also done it for the wall that I made earlier. So the glass there now follows the centre line rather than being to one side. And so I'm going to show you now how you can add in extra panels. Okay, because again, storefront at first is okay to give you some framing, but it's a bit ugly really with that thick, heavy framing and the number of divisions it's got. It's much better if you can put your own divisions in. So to add in divisions, you've got two options basically. You can use curtain grid on the architecture tab, and you can just place your own grid lines, which for a simple wall like this is probably all you need to do. So I could make those divisions even in this view, or I could go into plan. Zooming right in, you can see the divisions there as well. So if you remember using dimensions, I can draw to those grid lines a dimension and simply make them equal. Okay, so that's given me some nice divisions in that curtain wall, but it's not going to show up in 3D until I put some framing there. So again, I'm going to use mullion. So it's a fairly simple system once you get used to it, as long as you remember curtain walls under the wall tool, and then grids and mullions you have on the architecture tab there. So I've done my grids, now I'll go to mullion. I can't put a corner mullion onto these panels. I need to use a rectangular mullion. So I'm just going to use the 30mm square there, which is a nice small one, and I can choose those two grid lines. Okay, so that's a much more streamlined framing system than what you have with the storefront curtain wall. So I could do that with these curtain walls. You could also, like I said, use another option, which is to go into the wall and choose edit type, and there are options there to automatically create grids. So you can choose maximum spacing, and then there are framing options below that. So I'll let you work those out. I won't do those now, but I'm sure you can work those out if you look at the options you have there when you go to edit type. For a project like this, it's probably going to be fairly easy for you to just create curtain grids by clicking onto the walls directly, and then placing your own mullions. And so the final thing I'll show you is how to then put a door into a wall like this. So firstly, you can see the wall is going above my ceiling, so I'm going to select that and change the height of that wall so that it's no higher than the ceiling. And then again, I'm going to use tab to select one of those glass panels. So actually I might select the one on the right. And then if you go to edit type and load, you'll see there's a curtain wall panels folder where you have all sorts of predefined door panels that are set up for curtain walls. So this is a nice simple one, that door plate, or that door with a single push plate. Open. Okay, so I've got there, you can see a door showing up in my 3D view. I'll show you that in plan. So it's showing up reasonably well in plan, but you can see then it's also set out from the centre line, just like the panel was previously. So I'm going to select that door, go to edit type, and you can see if you scroll down that it also has an offset value, and I'll change that to 0 to match the glass panels. So that's brought it to the centre line, and it'll look better in the 3D view. Right, so to finish that off from the outside, you could either bring the ceiling out or add another wall above this one, which is probably the option I'd choose. But I'll just leave it at that for now. So make sure you have an idea about curtain walls, and it's a really useful option, like I said, for adding glazing that is often easier than using windows. People sometimes try to do complex glazing systems using a series of windows, but it's actually easier, far easier to use a curtain wall once you've spent a bit of time learning those options.